Ms. Hinson is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, it's very clear we have quite the challenging task ahead of us, not just tonight, but for months and years to come. But I am confident with the leadership of Chairman Gallagher and Ranking Member Krishnamurthy. Thank you for your leadership. Our Democratic Republic will win this strategic competition with the Chinese Communist Party, and we will also make sure that President Xi Jinping's Marxist outlook for a new world order that squashes freedom will never come to pass. We are not going to allow that to happen, and we cannot fail. So to our witnesses, thank you for appearing before us tonight and having the courage to tackle these tough issues with us. I would like to start with you, Mr. Pottinger, and I would like to review just for a moment. I kind of made a list of, if you want to call them the top 10 hits list of some of the activities that the CCP and PLA engage in, and these are just things that were discussed here tonight. Human rights abuses, mass surveillance of the Chinese people, genocide of the Uyghurs, trade exploitation, IP theft, economic coercion, funneling fentanyl via the drug cartels, international espionage, economic espionage, direct threats against our ally, the sovereign nation of Taiwan. So that's just a start there. It's certainly not a comprehensive list, but would you agree that this is a fair summary of the CCP's malign activities?
That's a pretty good top 10, and the list is a lot longer, Congresswoman.
Yeah, absolutely, I agree. And so it's the tip of the iceberg, as we would call it. Would you say that another issue that I think is very important to all of the people who pay us to be here, the taxpayers, that their hard-earned paychecks should certainly not be funneled to funding these activities or the CCP or the PLA, any of those organizations?
That's right. There is already a basis for halting the investment of American retirees' money and any American investment from going into Chinese military-affiliated companies. It's just not being enforced by the Treasury Department.
And I'd like to highlight one other important issue. I think we're in agreement that a hardworking farmer in Iowa should never be on the hook for funding some of the same bad actors who are literally stealing the seed corn out of his fields, which happened right in Iowa, in our backyard. Aspiring was busted just about a little over 10 years ago. So what do you make of the reporting that American taxpayer funds have been funneled to the CCP and PLA? Can you provide some of the most concerning examples beyond what you mentioned just in terms of investment?
Well, the amount of money is vast, and that is because the Chinese Communist Party, like I was talking about at the beginning, they're magicians. They created incentives through coercive measures for Wall Street index funds to add more and more Chinese companies to their indices. And a lot of investors, a lot of big fund managers in the United States don't actually look at the Chinese companies they're investing in or the companies at all that they're investing in. They just follow those big indices, like the MSCI index. Well, according to reporting, the MSCI had been resisting adding more of these Chinese companies, including ones that are affiliated with the military, to their list. And the Chinese Communist Party said, if you don't add more of our companies, we will withhold data from you and withhold licenses for you to operate. And lo and behold, suddenly the number of Chinese companies that appeared on these indices tripled, quadrupled, quintupled, and more money passively flowed from American pensioners and endowment funds at universities into these Chinese companies, which are opaque, and many of them are servicing the Chinese military.
Right, so it's short-term gain for long-term pain in this case, right? It's exactly the opposite as normal.
It's fiduciary irresponsibility on top of that.
Absolutely. And Ms. Tong, I'd like to applaud you as well for bringing up the journalists. That was my career before I got into politics. I started off trying to get to the bottom of the truth and show that truth, news of the day, every single day. And you really experienced that horrible truth of the CCP. So thank you for your bravery. What would you say in the propaganda space is the CCP's biggest tool? What is the biggest threat there? And how are they utilizing that propaganda machine, even here in the United States?
I think if the U.S., if China does not allow journalist presence from Wall Street Journal or New York Times or Washington Post or CNN to have any presence in China, then the U.S. should ban the Chinese journalists from coming here as well. And currently, Chinese people certainly could not view the American programs such as this in China. So we shouldn't allow CCTV or CGTN's presence in the United States as well. And also, the WeChat actually played a very, very big role in sanitize the Chinese Americans here about what their values or outlook is. Within the WeChat, there are a lot of open platforms that's set up by the CCP. So, for example, they targeting Chinese students organizations, overseas Chinese communities, even for eating purpose. They could gather a lot of Chinese Americans to, for example, protest in front of some organizations for their purpose, to do their bidding. So all of these, ways that the United Front work has penetrated our society very effectively, and we should get smarter to counter the CCP's propaganda, especially against their United Front work.
Yeah, well, we had Chinese newspapers with that propaganda being delivered to members' offices here in Congress not too long ago, and we put a stop to that as well. So thank you, Ms. Tong, and I yield back.